Hi, this is Stuart Nachbar with Educated Quest. With me today is Jim Crawley. He is the Director of Global Recruitment for Hope College in Holland, Michigan. Hope is one of the original and continuing colleges that change lives. What's special about these schools is while they are not the single-digit acceptance rate schools that you read about, large or small, Hope offers many of the same opportunities that those schools offer along with more achievable admissions for a very good to excellent student. Hope is in a very nice community. It's on the waterfront on Lake Michigan, just like Loyola Chicago, just like Northwestern. Uh, it's also very cold along Lake Michigan in the wintertime. So hope this is a very interesting school. Jim, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Stuart. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I hope I read is one of three of the colleges that changed lives that's a Christian school.
Mhm.
Yet a little less than a quarter of the student body is neither Christian nor Catholic, not related teachings. How does the community um, include everyone but still follow to a Christian um, ambition and aspiration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we were founded 160 years ago by the Dutch Christian Reformed Church, as many colleges, small private colleges in the US were also founded by churches. So that's very common. Some have maintained that relationship over the years to varying degrees. We have certainly maintained the relationship with a Christian uh, faith, not so much a particular church. But we welcome students from all faiths and students who declare that they don't currently have an affiliation with a church or a faith. That is not part of our admissions process. We want students to come. We want them to make those big decisions that they make as an adult, and one of those is what role, if any, does faith play in my life? And if it doesn't play any role, that's okay. If it does play a role, then what can we do to help you? Are you comfortable with where you're at? Do you want your faith to grow? Or, do you want to be involved? Do you not want to be involved? A very quick story that goes along with that is we had a tour guide. She was American, and her brother went to Hope. The tour guide said that she went to our chapel. We have chapel 3 times a week. That's not required. She went to chapel on the average of twice a week. But she said her brother, who's a football player, didn't know where the chapel was. Now, that's an exaggeration. It's hard to miss the chapel. But her point was they were at different places in their life in terms of the role that their faith played and whether they felt the need to be practicing all the time or if it's just kind of in their brain and that's how that helps form them as a person. But again, we want students to ask the big questions, have the big conversations, get a great education. And if faith is part of that, great. And if it's not, that's fine too.
You mentioned Hope being founded by a Dutch Reformed church. Is that how Holland, Michigan was founded too?
Yeah, Holland itself too. The immigrants came from Holland, came from the Netherlands, and many of them. And if you were to look, if we had a phone book anymore, which we don't, but if we had a phone book, the Vander, the name starting with the Vander would be a large section of the phone book. So there's a lot of Dutch heritage here. We have the National Tulip Festival in Holland. So we go from the 32,000 people to 250,000 people for about 10 days. It's really crazy, but are the downtown. You can see some of the tulips there in this background. I'm right in the way of it, but you can see the tulips on the side. That would be in the spring, obviously, but we are literally right next to the downtown area. So if this were a picture and I could pivot you around to the left, you would see the backside of downtown literally right there. So it's very convenient. The town celebrates, so does the campus, our Dutch heritage and through the Tulip Festival and through the just the beauty of being a tourist town near Lake Michigan.
Are the flowers always growing that well all 12 months a year?
Traditionally in the spring. So that'll be probably a March to, or really an April to mid-May, April to the end of May. You'll have really the tulips out and then we'll plant other things, obviously, but that is I can't really get totally out of the way, but you can see the tulips back there. Yeah. So, and then there's literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of tulips that are in bloom for Tulip Festival.
But in terms of what you were saying a moment ago about, this was founded by Christians. Um, a lot of students do go to chapel still.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep. So as I mentioned, it's offered 3 times a week from 10:30 to 10:50 in the morning. There's no other standing meetings or classes held at that time.
Okay.
Not to say students won't have things they have to do if they needed to, but there's no, like, nothing takes that time away if they prefer to go to chapel. We have in that chapel that's behind us, we have on the average of 900 to 1,000 people that go to chapel. Now that's faculty, staff, and students that typically pack the chapel. It's run by students. The music is done by students. Quite often, the message is done by a minister or somebody on our staff. But the rest of it is organized by students, as is the Sunday service as well. So we want the students to be their service. If they want to come, they want to be organized by them for the most part, and the music done by them. And so it's a very popular thing to do. And you see their student in chapel, students of that I know are of various faiths, and some that are not of that have a faith, but they want to be with their students. They want to, or their friends rather. They want to be with them. They want to kind of celebrate with them and enjoy that time. And again, that's about a third. Well, there's faculty and staff in there too. So I would say it's probably about 28% of the student body might be in there for a given chapel.
And with academics,
Mhm.
this is a school with like 3,300 undergrads.
Yep. Yep. Undergrad only.
And the academic breadth I saw was I've seen larger schools that didn't offer as many degree programs. There's like 9 engineering programs and there's
Correct.
nursing. And in admissions, do you look at the application in terms of a major, or is it more of a single doorway and you want the students to be ready to be in any major?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's they're being admitted to the college, not to the program. But I would say there are times where if a student is especially if they're a borderline student, or if they're because we tend to look for a mid 3-point average. I mean, yeah, we look for about a 3.4 to get in. 3.8 is the average of our class each year, so it's a very strong class. That's the average, right? So 3.4 is where academic scholarships start. So that's a good kind of target for us to say 3.4 and above is kind of where we want to be, because we want the kids to qualify for some scholarship money. But I think the students are we're looking for that qualified student in the terms of the academics, the solid curriculum, whether it's AB, IB, AP, A level, O level, whatever it might be. The only ones I would say that sometimes there's a little more critiquing going on would be if a student wants to go into engineering. It's not a secondary admission program, so that's not an issue. But if they don't have math and physics in high school, they're going to be behind coming into their first year. And the
Okay.
challenge with the international student, maybe not so much of a challenge with the US, but with international, because we're issuing the immigration document for 4 years and their scholarship is only for 4 years. If they're behind coming in on the front end, they might not be able to finish in 4 years. So
What
that's
about
where I just have that honest conversation with the student. Is there anything more you can do before you get here to kind of get some of that math and physics under your belt? Can you do something in the summer, et cetera, so that you are ready? The only secondary admission program we have is nursing right now.
okay.
And so that I'm very upfront with the students as well, is you're going to come in, you're admitted to Hope. You have to apply to the nursing program after you've done some prerequisite classes. And there's certainly the possibility that you might not get in. There's only so many spots. You can be a very good student, but it'll get down to the top, 40 students each year that actually get into the nursing program. So we also tell them, that there are other options, and we try to explain those to them too if they don't get into nursing.
So you'd be admitted to nursing when you're a sophomore,
Right.
after
Right.
you've proven yourself academically in the freshman courses.
Correct.
Right. That's
Correct.
a little different than most other colleges.
Yep. Yep. It's a secondary admission. And like I say, engineering doesn't have it. We do an engineering, exploring engineering course in the freshman year. And to be honest with you, that's a weeding out course. So that course is really to give an overview of engineering and what's going to be required. It's pretty intense, and we basically say if you don't like what you're seeing here, if this is not what you want to do, engineering is probably not for you. And so the purpose is there to make sure they're serious about going in engineering, but it's not secondary admission. It's just a class that they'll have to take in the first year.
Now, this is probably the only school I've seen where there's a freshman seminar, which every school has some version of that, but there's also a senior one.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about both of them?
Yeah, the freshman seminar is different in the sense that you have multiple seminars, multiple topics that you can choose. That I want my seminar, my freshman seminar to be this topic, and you choose it, and it's taught by faculty, administrators on campus. That, like, I have a colleague in admissions who actually teaches a freshman seminar class. So they meet for like an hour a week. It's a 1 credit class, and they take it throughout the first semester. Um, and it allows them to explore just a very specific, really thought-provoking topic. The faculty member may do the course based on a book or on a concept or on it could be any number of things, really. They submit a proposal and then it goes through review. But so that's like that 1 course, 1 credit first year. The senior seminar is something you do in your senior year, obviously, that is really a culmination of your studies at Hope and your major specifically. So it may involve research, it may involve or a presentation, it may involve a publication. There's going to be some sort of a public presentation of it as well. So it's kind of like when if you were to think of it at the graduate level, it would be kind of like your thesis. It would be kind of like your ultimate presentation at the end. And I think it just adds to the many aspects of Hope that really rely on experiential learning. We're 93% of our students now do experiential learning at Hope. We're ranked number 27 in the nation by US News for research. So when you talked about that 1% of universities, some of those fall into the Ivy Leagues. They fall into that category with us as research institutions. So we're in very good company. But the senior seminar and research and internships, that's all part of that experiential learning that Hope really believes in. We're trying to build students for their future. We want them to get into the best grad schools, get into the best jobs. And so that senior seminar allows them to really pull it all together and be able to present, this is the difference that's made in me. This is the difference I can make in the future. This is what I've learned. This is how it's impacted me. Here's what I want to do with it. Like, they really get a chance to show off, basically, and say, this is where I'm headed. This is where I went, and this is where I'm headed.
When a college is this size and has this many majors, there must be very ambitious fundraising all the time.
Yeah, it is. I think that we're very committed to many of to all of our majors, but when you look at, the traditional, we are a liberal arts college, but I think that the definition of a liberal arts college has changed, especially in the last 20 years, even 30 years. It isn't so much of a curriculum anymore. Is an overall, the concept of the education you'll receive at a liberal arts and the type of attention you'll receive from faculty. And I think that we many years back, we made the conscious decision of being not just the liberal arts, but the liberal arts and sciences. And so our strongest areas are in STEM and in business. But we have obviously a lot of other small programs like psychology and exercise science and those kind of things that are also very strong, but they're smaller programs. Our average class size is only 14. So even though the freshman classes, certainly you'll have some bigger ones. I think our biggest lecture hall seats 75, and you'd be lucky, or you probably wouldn't even have a class there because it's only one classroom of that size in the whole campus. So I think we're really trying to look at the other thing that colleges need to do, and we do it well, I think, is look at those majors to decide, where are we headed with some of those majors? Like, what are the jobs of the future? And you can't really predict all of them, but you can look at some of these areas and see what the growth areas are and what tends to be going on in the corporate world. And what are they looking for at the graduate school level too? What experiences can we give our students through these majors that will allow them to go and be very successful in grad school. We've had students go to some of the top grad schools in the nation, and arrive in their first, let's say, biology class, and be put as a lab partner with somebody from that school who did their undergrad at that big school, and they're working on a piece of equipment. And our students have been working on it for 2 years, have been on that equipment for 2 years. And that student from that large institution, which is a research one institution, had never seen that piece of equipment in their whole undergrad experience. So that's what we're trying to do through all of these majors, is provide those experiences so they are competitive. Again, preparing them for the next step.
I'm looking at the picture behind you. It's a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
What leads people to say yes? Is it the campus? Is it, what do they feel? What do a lot of these kids feel when they come to visit with their parents?
And that's a key thing of what you just said, Stuart, is the visit. Like, unfortunately, for like the international kids, the US abroad, that's a little more complicated to be able to do that. Some are able to, but within the US, we do get visits, a lot from the Midwest, but certainly from the East Coast, West Coast, and South, we get students coming in as well. So whatever it is that draw them to us first, whether it was one of our reps visiting their school, whether it was that they're looking for a specific type of school, they were looking for research, whatever it might be. If we can get them on our campus, I think they really find that it's a very comfortable, welcoming, kind of family oriented, like in the sense of you feel like you're part of a family when you join the Hope community. And I think that many parents, especially, like the safety factor, that it's not a walled campus by any means, but it's in a very nice area, and with the downtown right there, there's very safe, beautiful, clean tourist area. It just kind of exudes a welcoming atmosphere. If you walk across campus, you feel like, and people say hello, like you walk by people that you don't know, and they're going to say hello and welcome to Hope and things like that. So it's very rare that you walk across and nobody would say anything to you. And I think people feel that kind of that welcoming atmosphere when they're here. And I think they're impressed by our faculty. Our faculty will talk to them like on a one-to-one basis. It isn't like an over your head type conversation. They're talking to them about, this is what we can do here at Hope. You have to decide whether it's the right thing for you, but this is what we have to offer. And like laying it on the table so that they can consider it amongst all the schools that they're looking at.
And what leads people to say no?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think we do get some no's, certainly, just like everybody does. It could be financial. I think we do a really good job with packages, but you don't know, we don't know what other people are offering them. So that's always hard to do that when it comes financial aid time. Some of it, if they're US citizens, it's based on that need factor as well. We're not a cheap school, but we're not the most expensive either. I think we're kind of in the middle. And so I think that's one. I think if students, they may look at the quality of Hope, but then they may be looking at really for something that's bigger. I like to say we have the best of both worlds here, because you come to Hope and you're in a small town, small campus, kind of on the big side of a small school at 3,300. That's a decent size. But then you're only 40 minutes from Grand Rapids, which is the second largest city in Michigan. You've got semi-pro sporting events. You've got festivals, concerts, and many students go back and forth to Grand Rapids. Many American students have cars, and if you don't have a car, you probably get a friend that does. So they go back and forth to Grand Rapids. We're also just a 3-hour train ride from Chicago, and the train station is right next to campus. You can walk there in 5 minutes or 7 minutes, depending where you are on campus. So students inevitably, maybe not every year, but at least a couple times in their 4 years, we'll get a bunch of friends together to go to Chicago for the weekend. So you've got this small town, you've got this medium-sized town, and you've got one of the largest cities in the world that's only 3 hours away. So I think students like that accessibility, but like the comfort and the safety and the academic intensity of Hope too. I mean, they want to thrive. They've thrived on that in high school, and they want to be challenged. And I think we do a good job of challenging them, but also providing them the support to be successful.
Are kids who look at home also looking at other liberal arts colleges, or are they looking at a variety of schools?
Yeah, I think we get both, but I would say very often with the top students, the very top students, we are competing with, actually a lot of times with large schools. We're actually competing, or even with Ivy League. So we're a top school. We're a very good school with a high average GPA. I don't mind being second choice to an Ivy, right? We're very different to an Ivy, but I don't mind being a backup school to an Ivy. I mean, we're getting a really, really good student. The point is that we want to make sure that they're, to the best of our ability, making sure they're making the right choice for themselves, and they need to decide that. So we just give them as much information as possible to make that decision. But I would say we certainly have some some students who are looking maybe at all Christian schools, or we have some students that are looking at all private liberal arts schools. But we also have this upper tier of students that, not that the other ones aren't upper tier, but we have some that are looking at, some elite schools, and then Hope is in the mix. But if they happen to get into the early decision school or something like that, then they go there. But we're still in the mix if they don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, I read about Hope Forward, which is kind of like a tuition model where
Mhm.
basically kids are going to act as ambassadors, raise money in exchange for having to pay tuition while they're going. Um,
Yep.
that's a model I've never seen before at another school.
Yep.
What led the Hope's leadership to adopt that model and recruit students to take advantage of it?
Sure. So President Scogan, our current president, who's also an alumnus of the university, when he got to Hope about 5 years ago, he basically, over the course of the first year, he said, this system, this financial system of funding, students funding their education is basically broken. I mean, it's really hard for families to make it work. Can we do something different? And so he came up with Hope Forward, which is kind of on the pay it forward concept. Hope Forward is a fully funded tuition program. It's very highly selective, not as to who we pick, but it's competitive is a better word than selective. It's competitive. Um, Students they have to be admitted to Hope, and then they also have to apply to Hope Forward. Deadline is the middle of December. It has its own application, its own essay response, and its own recommendation form. And in fact, the admissions paperwork is not even looked at in the Hope Forward process. It is only the Hope Forward application, the essay, and the recommendation to start. Then we decide who moves forward to an interview. From the interview group, we decide who receives it. But it is a full tuition award. Basically, recipients are invited to attend Hope College tuition free. Right now, it's major donors that are giving money for the students to have this opportunity. And then the concept is that graduates sign, or that recipients sign a pledge or a promise or a covenant. I guess you could use any number of words, but it's basically a promise to give back to the program annually after they graduate. There is no minimum amount. It's not a loan. Not paying it back. They're giving whatever they want each year. And then that's really augmenting the other fundraising, because we're not unrealistic to think that the donations they're giving back are going to fully fund the program, because that's not going to be the case. But it adds to the program so that we can continue to and add more students to the cohorts. Right now, it's a cohort of 40 per year, with typically 8 of those being international. So it's nice. We try to keep that almost like the 20% of the incoming Hope Forward will be international, keeping that cohort diverse. Yeah, and that's the basic concept of it. And the essay has very specific questions that we want the students to answer, or it's really a 3-part question that they're combining into one answer. But it's key to us making the decision who to move forward to the interview. And we certainly recognize that there's, the use of AI is out there, and so essays can be created, but that's, I think, where the interview comes in. Like, we'll really be able to make reference. We'll ask the students questions ahead of time. We'll give them questions ahead of time and ask them some impromptu questions. But we may also reference that essay to say, "Oh, in your essay, you mentioned this. Tell us more about that." So we're trying to a little bit combat the AI in that regard, because we definitely want this to be the student-focused process. And we want to try to find the right matches for students who, it's not all about them giving back in the future. It's more about them understanding this concept of receiving a gift and what that means, and how you can pass on that opportunity to other people.
Does financial need play a factor in this?
It does not right now, no. And so the future of Hope Forward is that our President Scogan, would like to see our campus be Hope Forward, like the whole campus would be tuition free. But that's a very large fundraising goal. And so right now it's cohorts. but the need does not factor into, it's not to say that won't come up in somebody's essay response, but so then it would be read. So can I say that it's never an influence? I can't really say that because somebody could be influenced by something they've written that they've read, but it's not a part of the process.
But they can voluntarily allude to it in their essay.
Certainly could. And it could be alluded to in the recommendation to a degree, but it's probably going to come out more in the essay. I haven't found in my review of files last year, I didn't find that to be the case too often. Sometimes there was a reference made that where you could infer that there was some need there, but the way we ask the question, we really encourage them to concentrate on replying to the three-part question. And it is out there. So if students, pull up the Hope Forward page on our website, they can see that essay question without having to actually fill it out beforehand.
Yeah, that's an interesting process because you could get people who really do need,
Right.
this is the only way they're going to be able to go to college.
Yep.
And they could be so grateful.
Mhm.
And if they have a successful experience, they could be ambassadors to the college for a long time.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
when they're young, their income might not be very high enough, but when they finally are earning money, they could help, raise more money,
Right.
down the road. And
Yep.
then you get the other side of it is you have to have you might have people whose character is so strong
Mhm.
that you're gonna say, wow, if this person is successful here, he or she will be
Right.
successful to the public we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this a way that Hope hopes, sorry, to diversify the student body further, like geographically?
I mean, that's certainly kind of a part of the planning is like how can we the 40 awards we do try to without trying to eliminate really qualified candidates, we do try to look for the distribution of awards across the country, or encourage applications from across the country so that we end up with a very diverse pool. Um, you mentioned about the students being grateful, and we certainly hope they are. We certainly hope that they continue to keep that mentality of the effect of this Hope education having on them over the course of their life. But so Honduras right now in Honduras, just as an example, we have 11 starting as of this year. We have 11 Honduran students out of 80, and 9 of the Honduran students are on Hope Forward. So these are students definitely from an area of Honduras where they could not have afforded, on a regular scholarship, they could not afford it to come, but they are coming because they were able to get Hope Forward. They're just doing a wonderful job in the process of getting selected, and then they're also really impacting the campus. We have students from Haiti as well that are here on Hope Forward. And the Haitian students are coming from just an awful circumstances, of course, in Haiti. These actually, our students right now were raised in orphanages. So
Oh,
they're
wow.
coming from a very different situation of being raised in an orphanage and then coming to Hope College on Hope Forward. And so we are certainly affecting some students that have a great need and could not do it without it. But again, it's not a definite part of the process, but could certainly be noticed if it's mentioned by the student.
Last question. A student is enticed to come to visit with their family. Aside from touring the campus and talking to students, what is one thing that they should do either on campus or in town to get a flavor of the school and the community?
Yeah. I would say, if you really want to see the beauty of the area, like you said, aside from just walking around, which I think you get a feel for Holland, but go to the lakeshore. The lakeshore is 10 minutes away, 10, 12 minutes. And it's the beautiful shores of Lake Michigan. It's the longest stretch of freshwater beach in the world. And so even in the winter, we have students who will go there purposefully because you can walk on the ice shelf. Like you can walk out about 100 yards out into the lake and you're on like 10 foot of ice right in the middle of winter. So it's just a really incredible, it's a beautiful view of a very natural area of Michigan. So I think you get the beauty of campus and you get the beauty of the town, but you don't, unless you go out to the lakeshore, you don't realize how close we are and what makes us a very attractive area to come to for students, for tourists, for locals. And some of it is that proximity to Lake Michigan. It's just a really beautiful part of the state.
It's interesting you say this because people in New Jersey and people in California don't think of Michigan as having a beach.
Right, exactly. It's the longest stretch of freshwater beach in the world. And I've had students actually from New Jersey, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine in New Jersey, who came to visit us. I took her there and she just looked at it in awe and said, "This looks like an ocean." And it really does. You can't see the other side. And Lake Michigan isn't even the largest of the Great Lakes. And we actually have t-shirts in town that say "No salt, no sharks, no worries." Um, so it's this kids, it's 86 degrees here right now. We're in September, and I can guarantee you there are kids on the beach today. As soon as they're out of class, they're on the beach. So it's a great area. One other thing I mentioned too, so we're talking kind of about the area, and we talked about, I mentioned winter. Another unique feature of Holland, the town of Holland, and of most of the areas of campus is that our sidewalks are heated. So you don't get that ice and snow buildup. We've had very moderate winters lately, so it hasn't been a big deal anyway. But when it does snow, the sidewalks are heated, so it's very easy to walk around. You're not worried about slipping and falling. It's just another unique feature about the area.
Well, I'll have to tell people on the Jersey Shore about this because none of that's there in the
Yeah,
winter time.
exactly.
Jim, thank you for spending this time with me. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks, Stuart. I enjoyed talking to you as well.